my stable of artists, right? It's like roster sounds way better.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, it's just semantics.
So
but
just being a piece of meat on a hook, right?
Yeah, or sometimes being the black quota, of being like, oh man, like there goes our black artist, really. Like sometimes you get approached with that and you're like, that's kind of gross. Right. But, but you kind of understand why, I guess, but yeah, like establishing artists is what we're looking at. Like there's another artist we want to do that with. Her name is Miso Kim, and her work is really great. She really makes fascinating work. And those two people I was actually in class with at UTA. So if we can do things like that, just help artists populate that resume.
Sure.
Eventually, like right now, one thing that we're getting down is the steps to getting grants and public art and residencies. Like if we can figure that out, we'll do it for other artists too.
Yeah.
So like our dream is to say, hey, Charles, there's this residency that you can go to, right? That can fund you, that you can go do that. Or this idea you were talking about, we can potentially help you get a grant for that.
Right.
Like if we can do that, like that's
incredibly valuable to the artists because I feel like there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of how the ecosystem in the art world works, and a lot of the opportunities. I don't know if they're intentionally kept secret or if it's just a matter of just not really being. It's really hard to find out the information on how to successfully navigate all that. Because it's not. There's not really. Maybe it's because there's 1,000 different ways to do it. Yeah. Right.
And it's not often talked about.
Right.
Like if you go, that's one thing that's great about your podcast is it has that information there. Right. Like when you go to any other, if you're like, I do it all the time to like on the drive here, like before I leave and get in the car, I'll make like a YouTube list and just listen to it.
Right.
But you can't really find advice.
Right.
Like you'll find be a true artist type videos or even looking up how to start a gallery. It's not that much advice where someone can say step 1, step 2, step 3. The only steps is academic.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. I wonder if it's like artists are scared to say that they have anything on their mind other than
just art.
Their art, right? Like I have to maintain this this perception that I'm only thinking about art, versus like denying the fact that everyone worries about paying the bills at some point.
Yeah, and then also
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Also, when you're you can't just be that. I just want to. Some get into the right gallery. They can just paint whatever they want, however they want, all day. But when you're trying to only be about the art, and then you're signing contracts and you're dealing with an art market that really care about that thing, right? Then it puts you in a different space, right? You don't start to think about things like leverage. You don't start to think about things like you are the commodity, right? Like you don't think of yourself in those ways, right? It feels less human in a way. It feels less artistic.
Right.
But when you're being thought of like that, without that awareness, then you can get into some trouble, right? Then you can get disillusioned with the art market really, really fast. Right? Like that was the thing with me. I was like, oh, I'm not doing galleries. And then, settling down because of Cedric or Trenton and like, okay, this is what it is, right? And so now I'm starting to learn the game of leverage, right? And that information you talk about, the best advice that I've been given on several occasions is actually when I'm turning down representation, right? I don't know what it is. Maybe me and my wife come off as nice people, non-threatening people or something, but not really divas about it. And so, and a lot of those relationships don't really start with please have us, please sign us, right? It's never really like that. It's someone taking recognition of what we're doing and then offering. Like there's one gallery owner, he's like, No, I want, and this is a gallery that I dreamed of.
Right.
That every day I walk down Dragon Street, I was just like, if I can just be in there.
Right.
Right. To now being in a situation where it's like, how am I going to tell them no? Like, I'm like, all right, I'm looking at my wife like, are we sure we want to? She's like, yes, we're sure.
Right.
Like, but are we really sure? Yes, we're sure. Next day, I don't know. Yeah, we're sure. And it's like, then you had to sit down and have the conversation, and they remind you of the reasons why you're saying no, right?
Right.
And it's the exclusivity. Now that's not to say that I won't ever do it, right? I feel like by the time I go through undergrad and get an MFA, I'll be ready. Yeah. But for right now, it's not very necessary, right? Like we're doing well, we're doing okay. Yeah. Right. So it's not like this thing of if we don't do it, what are we gonna do? Right. It's more so we're betting on ourselves and we just started. Yeah. That's the main talk. It's never, well, we don't like 50-50. Oh, like we don't like exclusive. Like, no, it's look, we're betting on ourselves. We're trying to build something and we can't give up right now. Yeah. Like how would that, like we can't live with giving up right now. Right. And when you approach it that way, how can someone be like, well, fuck off then? Right. No, they're not. Yeah. They're like, I can respect that. Yeah. Right? Because once again, I like to put it all on the table. Right. I don't like to hint at things. I don't like to lie about things. Right. I've seen it complicate things in my own family. Right. So now it's just a thing of, I really would like to be here, but this is why it's not going to work. Sure. This may work. What do you think about that? And like one of the things that we propose often is, what if there's a specific amount of pieces that's delegated to you? Right. And normally that's a no. Right. Right. But I remember one place we brought up that idea and we were told, no, we don't do that here. That wouldn't be fair to the artist that's been here for like 25 years and followed all the rules. And we're like, dang, right. Right. That's true, very true. To finding out that they have an artist they do that with. And it's like an artist who has her own circle of clients that purchase her work often. She had leverage. Right. Right? She had leverage. And so we didn't have that leverage. Right. We didn't earn that right. So they do it, but they don't do it for us. Right. Right. And that's okay. Right. You can't have it.
And they will someday.
Maybe. Right? Yeah, maybe. Because it's like walking to someone's house and demanding something. You know, like there's a certain respect that has to be there where it's like, maybe you don't want to do that with us. That's okay. Right. But if you're just struggling and you don't know what to do and you're not trying to focus on sales, that could hurt. Yeah. But if you're...
But the deal is you're negotiating from a place of strength. I took a negotiations course a long time ago, and they referred to it as BATNA. It's like best alternative to the negotiated agreement. Like it's like going in there and knowing, like, hey, I can say no to you because I'm good with where I am. Yes. Right.
And I'm okay. And you have to have yourself prepared for that in advance before the opportunity even comes. Like I would sit down and just think and say, if so-and-so gallery that I love comes, I'm going to have to say no. Yep, going to have to say no. And then when that time comes, it's a bit easier to say no. Right. Right. And you remember what your convictions are. Another thing that I do is, and I would advise other artists to do, is just listen. Mm-hmm. Listen. Like, you'd be surprised how many people don't listen. Right. Right. So like when we're in one of those meetings of a gallery who approaches us, we kind of don't say much of anything. Mm-hmm. They talk. Right. To all the way to the point where it's like, well, I've talked enough. What do you think? Right. And then when we're asked the question, then it's like, well, here's the reasons why we don't want to do that. Right. And we have clients that we don't want to give up. Right. Right. And then those are things that they pretty much just talk to us about. Right. Right. Like, we have clients, we have this to offer, we have this to offer, we have that to offer. Right. And you're listening. And you're like, well, look, like, this is what we're doing. Yeah. This is our hopes and our dreams right here. Yeah. And you're asking for it.
So whenever you're whenever you're sitting there listening, do you ever learn things about the business that
Yes.
you would?
Yeah, like, things that, you find out they have sayings like, artwork should be a rarity in a way. It should be like diamonds. If you start to see it everywhere, and it's not easy, it's not hard to get to. Like if you're showing your work here and here and here and here and here, it devalues in a way, and it starts to look a little bad, right? That's one thing, and that makes some sense, right? And then other things of why clients buy and why they're a benefit to you, and it goes back to a lot of the things that they talk to us about goes back to that saying of how do I make my stock rise, right? My value rise,
right?
And it doesn't happen by coming up with a new style of painting. It doesn't happen from getting better at painting. It doesn't. I wish it did, right? But it doesn't. It doesn't. There's no color choices you could pick that does that, right? So it's learning, well, what causes that value to rise, and we get that information from gallery owners, who end up becoming friends, right? And then we get that from clients who end up becoming friends, right? I was against school. I was like, I don't need it. Whatever that obstacle is, that wall is, I'll climb over it or kick it down. Right. But you don't know what that wall is. You don't know if you're capable of doing that. Like, there's so much up in the air. Right. But when you talk to clients and you hear how, oh yeah, when we look for artwork, like we look at the artist's work first, but then we always look at the resume. Right. And we always like to see if they're an alumni somewhere or whatnot. And you hear that conversation over and over. Now, there's things that make you think that you can get around it. Like, they'll say those things. They'll say, we only buy if our interior designer says so, or, we only buy artists who graduated, have MFA. And then you go, oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I've been considering school. And they're like, yeah, you should do it. You're talking to them. Right. Start talking about your kids and college funds and shit like that. And then you're like, I have a studio in downtown Dallas. Like, oh, we would love to see you. Like, oh, yeah, you can come by anytime. Right. I also have an exhibit coming up. Oh, we'll be there. Right. And they come to both places. And oftentimes they buy something. Right. Right. And it's like, okay, that gives you this sense of, okay, well, yeah, maybe we don't need it. But I feel like at some point, knowing the little bit I know now, I think that we would eventually hit a ceiling. Right. Right. Because at some point, it's like, well, how do you justify the increase in price point? Right. Right. And you have to think that it's only fair to the people who have bought before. Right. Because some buy for that reason, and then for you as an individual, it's like school's worthwhile for specific reasons, right? That I'm still looking into. I'm very transparent with Cedric. I'm still looking into it, man. Like, I don't know, I don't know if it's for me. I gave you that one semester. Right. Like, I'm gonna have to see. And right now I'm leaning towards, oh yeah, I gotta do that. Right. Because I don't like if there's a weak area, and it's a weak area that I can dispose of and strengthen, then yeah, the education aspect, yeah. I definitely need a lot of art history, I'll tell you. Right. I'll tell you that. I definitely need that. So yeah. And the main goal being not where I get my undergraduate degree at, but where I get the MFA at. Right. Right. And you start to see that there's a literal path, and there's obstacles laid out, but there's a literal path, right? Versus this one where it's up in the air. Yeah. You're doing all of this and you don't know if the door will shut in your face or not. Right. You don't know if it'll stall or not. So maybe that's a path worth looking at. Right. Right.
Yeah, I've had people make arguments on both sides, about that, and it's something I've asked myself before, because at my age, I look at the cost of an MFA program, and I'm just like, man, do I have enough runway left to to have a return on my investment?
Gotcha. I mean, even me being at 29, I'm like, I'll be 30 in January, and I'm still undergraduate, right? Like, So, and there's those things you look at, borrowing the money. You're 18, you don't care. Like,
Right.
you don't, I won't say you don't